In the 1930s, America was struggling to survive. The Great Depression had destroyed jobs, families lived in uncertainty, and the future felt darker every year. But during this difficult time, one sound began bringing people hope again. It was loud, emotional, energetic, and impossible not to dance to. That sound was swing music. And at the center of it all stood one man, Benny Goodman, the musician who would become known around the world as the King of Swing. But how did a shy clarinet player from a poor immigrant family become the biggest jazz star in America? And why did his music change American culture forever? Benny Goodman was born in Chicago in 1909 to a poor Jewish immigrant family. Life was extremely difficult. The family lived in crowded working-class neighborhoods where money was always scarce. His father believed music could keep children away from trouble, so Benny joined free music classes at a local community center. That was where he first picked up the clarinet. From the very beginning, people noticed something special about him. Benny practiced constantly. While other children played outside, he spent hours studying scales, tone, timing, and technique. Even as a child, he was known for discipline and perfectionism. But Benny was growing up during one of the most important moments in jazz history. Chicago in the 1920s was alive with music. Black musicians from New Orleans were bringing jazz north during the Great Migration, and the city became filled with new rhythms, improvisation, and emotional energy. Young Benny listened carefully to musicians like Louis Armstrong and other jazz pioneers. He admired their freedom, emotion, and creativity. He combined that emotional jazz feeling with his own technical precision, creating a style that sounded fresh, exciting, and powerful. By his teenage years, Benny was already performing professionally in clubs and dance bands. Musicians immediately recognized his incredible talent. Soon he moved to New York and became a successful session musician during the early 1930s. But America was still deep inside the Great Depression. Most dance orchestras sounded polite and safe. Audiences were tired, stressed, and emotionally exhausted. They wanted something new. Benny Goodman understood this perfectly.
I'm telling you, the acoustics in this room are killing the vibe.
Yeah? It's not the room, man. It's how we're playing. We need more fire.
In 1934, he formed his own orchestra and began experimenting with a more energetic style of jazz. The music was faster, sharper, more rhythmic, and filled with explosive emotional energy. This new style would eventually become known as swing music. At first, however, success did not come easily. The band struggled financially, audiences often seemed cold, and performances sometimes failed completely. But then everything changed because of radio. Benny Goodman and his orchestra began performing weekly on a national NBC program called Let's Dance. Millions of Americans suddenly heard the orchestra through their radios at home. Young listeners especially became obsessed with the exciting new sound. The orchestra sounded completely different from anything audiences had heard before. The brass sections were powerful and precise. The rhythm section created unstoppable momentum, and Benny's clarinet floated emotionally above the orchestra with incredible energy. Then came the moment that changed music history forever. In August 1935, Benny Goodman's orchestra arrived at the Palomar Ballroom in Los Angeles after a disappointing tour. At first, the audience seemed bored and uninterested. Benny realized the safe arrangements were not working, so he made a risky decision. The band launched into their hottest swing numbers, fast, wild, rhythmic music filled with energy and excitement. Suddenly, the crowd exploded. Young people rushed onto the dance floor, couples spun wildly across the ballroom. The atmosphere became electric. Historians would later describe this night as the birth of the swing era. Almost overnight, Benny Goodman became a national superstar. Across America, swing music spread rapidly through dance halls, radio stations, and theaters. Young people loved the freedom and excitement of the music. During a time filled with economic depression and uncertainty, swing gave people emotional escape and joy. Benny Goodman became the face of this entire movement. Fans screamed during concerts. Hollywood invited him into films. His records sold across the country. For one of the first times in history, jazz musicians became mainstream celebrities. But Benny Goodman's impact went far beyond popularity. During the 1930s, racial segregation still divided American society. Black and white musicians were often separated both socially and professionally. Yet Benny Goodman deeply respected black jazz musicians and believed talent mattered more than race. He hired legendary musicians such as Teddy Wilson, Lionel Hampton, and Charlie Christian to perform alongside white musicians in integrated groups. This was revolutionary at the time. Benny Goodman helped introduce black jazz artistry to mainstream audiences across America and challenged racial barriers inside the music industry. Many historians consider this one of the most important parts of his legacy. Then came another legendary moment. Carnegie Hall, January 16th, 1938. At the time, Carnegie Hall was considered one of the most prestigious classical music venues in the world. Many people believed jazz was too low class to belong there. But Benny Goodman proved them wrong. His orchestra performed one of the most important concerts in jazz history. The hall was packed with emotional audiences witnessing swing music elevated into serious art. The concert changed how America viewed jazz forever. Today, many historians still consider the Carnegie Hall performance one of the defining moments in American music history. Benny Goodman's orchestra became famous for incredible discipline and precision. Musicians often described him as demanding and perfectionistic. Rehearsals could be exhausting because Benny expected absolute excellence from every performer. But this perfection created a sound unlike any other orchestra of the era. Every section moved together with precision and power. And when Benny performed on clarinet, the emotional intensity could become unforgettable. During World War II, swing music became the soundtrack of an entire generation. Soldiers listened to Goodman's records overseas. Families danced to his music at home. Radio stations played swing music constantly across America. In a world filled with fear, uncertainty, and war, Benny Goodman's music brought people energy, optimism, and emotional release. He became more than a musician. He became a symbol of hope during difficult times. As musical styles changed after the war, the swing era slowly faded. New genres like bebop and rhythm and blues began taking over, but Benny Goodman's influence never disappeared. He transformed jazz into mainstream culture, inspired generations of musicians, and helped change the social structure of American music forever. Even today, when people imagine classic American swing, they often picture Benny Goodman's clarinet cutting through a roaring orchestra while dancers spin across crowded ballrooms under glowing lights. That is why Benny Goodman became known as the King of Swing. Not simply because he became famous, but because he captured the emotional heartbeat of an entire generation. During one of the hardest periods in American history, his music gave people excitement, freedom, energy, and hope. From a poor immigrant child practicing clarinet in a small Chicago apartment to the biggest swing musician in the world, Benny Goodman's story remains one of the greatest journeys in the history of jazz.